Watch out for them Ewoks, cause we're painting biker scouts today. The bike today was prepared by spraying it with a matte black spray from Army Painter. This will be our undercoat for the oak brown that we will place on top of the miniature to get its initial colour. However, if you have access to a Hyrax brown spray by Colourforge, then I would suggest to use this instead of the black, as it will save you a bit of time because you'll have a smooth brown finish to begin with. And you will probably only need one coat of oak brown to go over the top. Jumping onto a makeup brush now, we're going to use this slightly bigger bristle brush to give us a mottled looking effect over our brown base coat. And for this we're going to use a paint that's not traditionally used for painting a layer, but technically it's used as an effects paint. And that will be Wet Mud. I chose this paint because I really like the colour of it. And you can build up this colour by basically buffering it onto the miniature with light brush strokes, as these bristles are super soft and can give you full coverage on a model fairly quickly. I left some of the brown still showing through underneath, as we're going to go for a weathered look on the bike today. So the next step is to add a little bit of shade to the bike, and for this, instead of using washes or shade paints, we're going to be using speed paints, which have been diluted down slightly with water. And whilst the paint is still wet, just using a makeup brush to feather this out. I just got this paint and then started adding it into the recesses and also where I think natural shade, dirt and grime would lie. And yes, if you had an airbrush then you could probably do this even quicker, but I like to use and show different methods, as that's what painting is all about really, experimenting and seeing what works and what doesn't. Because this miniature is going to be viewed on the tabletop in games, I want the shape of the bike to be a little bit more defined. So I decided to darken down the shadows once more with a dark wood speed paint. Whilst the paint is on the miniature, it does look pretty dark. But as it dries, it will get a little bit lighter. So it's best to let it thoroughly dry once, see how dark it is, and if you want to go over the area again, then go for it. I've got to say on this side note, as a little hobby hack, that if you do use corks as a paint handle, and these bikes are pretty long so they will fall over, then just get a base and put some double-sided tape on it. And then when you're in between paints and place the miniature back on the table, it's gonna stay upright. I just want to showcase a few techniques to get your miniatures ready for battle, and the next section is going to be using a sponge. That's right, we ain't gonna be doing any highlighting on this mini, but instead we're going to be sponging on some highlighting colours. This will do two jobs for us. Not only will it bring out the edges of the armour intended for highlighting, but secondly it will go along with our weathered look that we're after. The paint was patted onto the edges and the corners of the sculpt, as well as other areas where there would be natural wear and tear. To increase the intensity of some of these sponged highlights, some skeleton bone was added to the tan flesh, and only a few of the extreme edges of the sculpt were then picked out. I mean, I've gotta say that I love doing techniques like these, where you can finish miniatures that little bit quicker. And this technique will work perfectly for a lot of Star Wars vehicles, and I'm pretty sure I'll be doing something like this for the Rebel AT-RT later on in this series. Now, what's been a fairly quickish method of painting the bike, you can stop there and then now concentrate on the details. But because I want these bikes to have been around for a while and seen some Ewok action, I'm going to add a couple more elements to this bike section. The first off is some black soot weathering powder. The powder was placed on with a scrappy looking brush and the tips of the bristles were dampened slightly. so it would make it easier for the powder to be placed onto the miniature. I want this to go on some of the areas such as where the handles are going to be attached, the air intakes on the exhausts, and a couple areas near the nitty-gritty recesses. Just where you'll naturally find some dust and rubbish building up as the bike flies through the air time after time. And to further enhance the weathered look even more, some scrapes and scuffs were added on using a fine tip brush and a bright looking silver. With this, it's really easy to go way over the top and just make it look like it's come out of a trash compactor. So I would suggest to go over the whole thing at least once, see how it goes, and if you want to add more, then you can do. For the cloth roll located on the back of the bike, I decided to go for a brighter looking colour. It's one of those details that I thought would be quite nice to see from a few feet away on the tabletop. And it's not going to be battered and weathered like the metal on the bike. So having some added visual interest on a miniature just like this does go a long way. The rest of the bike is going to have a reset of matte black painted on. I just want a base coat here for the metals to go on afterwards. And I'm not going to spend too much time on the details where the pedals are going to be, because once the rider has been positioned onto the bike, you won't see hardly any of it. But we'll paint it nonetheless, just in case you want to do one of these as a diorama with nobody on it. There was a quick highlight of Necromancer Cloak, followed by a thinner highlight of Wolf Grey. This bluey grey highlight will give an appearance of a softer leather material for the saddle. However, for the second highlight on the harder mechanical parts of the bike, such as the back and the cover of the engine, a uniform grey was used this time, to make it look like a harder material. I'm going to use some Vallejo gunmetal here, as this is a darker counterpart to our Army Painter gunmetal. However, if you are solely using the Army Painter range, just mix up a little bit of black with your metallic colour to get a similar result. I kind of just layered / highlighted this on the various different parts of the engine of the bike, as well as the two cylindrical rod bits that attach the front section as well. I'm not being too particular here, but just pick out some of the areas on the outer section of the bike and leave the black in the recesses just to give it that sense of depth. Just for funsies and to add a little bit more variation, one of the pipes on the bike were painted in a bronze colour. And this one you will actually see because the biker's leg will be sitting just above this. For additional weathering and shading, we come back to the black soot weathering powder. However, the brush this time was not dampened and was lightly dusted onto the various parts of the metals on the miniature. And this is quite a versatile product compared to, say, something like a wash. And this will be sealed in place at the end with some matte varnish. So don't worry about it completely coming off whilst you're transporting your miniatures from game to game. And of course, bringing out that shining silver paint once more, we can add a few more chips and scuffs to the metal parts, just like what we did with the armour section of the bike. And for triple funsies, I just got a few different colours off of the paint rack. And this was to paint all the lights and buttons on the biker's dashboard, and the two little dots on the front of the bike. Our scout biker was painted in the same method as our stormtrooper from a previous video, so if you haven't seen that yet, then check it out after this one. And if you would like to see a video on a different variety of forest and woodland basing, then check out the link which is on screen right now to get some ideas. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on hobbying.